This is the first part of two screencasts on the evolution of cars and American culture fascination with the automobile. So for the first part, we're going to start looking at the vehicles and look at some of the changes over time. So here we're looking at a Peugeot 1896, 1901. Not too much in this particular vehicle. Then we start moving on to what will eventually be the successful car, the most successful car, the Model T Ford. So here we see this particular vehicle, which is the Model F. Notice the price, $1,200. So for the most part, what I would say is these vehicles are definitely more expensive and exclusive to people with wealth, which is what's going to make the Model T Ford so significant. They're going to be able to take the cost of the car, drive it down to a point where the masses can afford that particular vehicle. So, you might have another vehicle that's better, but the issue here is it affordable? And so for the most part, these vehicles were for people of the upper class, people with wealth. And that's going to be an issue because you can't bring those vehicles have to cost a certain amount because of these particular factors, the interchangeable parts. The vehicles that are made prior to Henry Ford's Model T Ford, those vehicles you pretty much would have a part, but that was a part that was just unique. It was a part that was made for that particular vehicle as an individual vehicle. And it's not until parts were mass produced that you're in a situation where you can just replace parts of a vehicle. And of course, that is also going to bring down the cost of the car, and it's going to lead to a situation where the car is just more affordable. So we look at this particular vehicle, a couple of items that you want to take note of. Here it talks about a 4-cylinder engine. It can reach a speed of 40 to 45 miles per hour. Mass produced only in one color, which is black. So the mass production, again, that's going to be significant for the ability to bring the cost of the vehicle down. So here you see people working on an assembly line. And if you're not familiar with assembly line work, each individual plays a role in making one aspect of the vehicle. So maybe your job is to, put the wheel on and put the, bolts that are going to hold the wheel in place, the lug nuts, and then it goes on to the next guy, and maybe it's this guy who's tightening them up. And it kind of proceeds down the assembly line. When we're looking at a vehicle, the vehicle sits on what's known as the chassis, and the chassis is made out of steel, out of metal. And when we're looking at this one, we see the engine, which is here. This is the transmission, which is attached to a drive shaft that turns, and here, these sprockets that are throughout this drive shaft. And that eventually is what turns these wheels, which are here. And then the car body would sit. So you would have the wheels, the chassis, and then the vehicle actually sits on top of it or the other part, and it gets bolted to the chassis. That's the significance of the chassis. When we look at this vehicle here, you see once again drivetrain, transmission, the engine, and all of the internal mechanisms here, these sprockets that turn in different directions and get these wheels to spin. Let's take a look at the 4-cylinder engine. So when we're talking about cylinders in an engine, we are talking about the items that are here. 1, 2, 3, 4. So a 4-cylinder engine has 4 cylinders. An 8-cylinder would have 8. You could also have a 6-cylinder engine. So I'm going to go to this graphic to give you an idea of the significance.
The internal combustion engine is used in motorcycles, automobiles, boats, trucks, aircraft, ships, heavy-duty machinery of the engine's crankshaft, and one single thermodynamic cycle. Let's take a look at the basic internal part. Shaft. Piston rods causes the lifter to make each piston move up and down.
So what I was saying, ultimately, this section is going to be attached to the transmission, which is going to be attached to the drive shaft, which then will be attached to the rear, which is where the wheels would ultimately be located. So that's kind of what's going on.
At the top of the crankshaft there is a camshaft which is connected. Pistons move up and down. The camshaft is turning, making the valves to open and close. First, intake stroke. The inlet valve is opened, and the fuel-air mixture is drawn in, as the piston travels down. Second, compression stroke.
So what's going on when we're looking at that particular image, the spark plug, which is this item here, is creating a spark. Fuel is being dumped. So let's just take the spark plug is here. Fuel is being added. The spark creates an explosion. The explosion forces this piston down, and this is happening at different stages with this particular four-cylinder motor. And so those explosions are forcing these pistons down, which are turning. And as I said, this is all linked up to the rear, the drive shaft, and ultimately to the wheel. So why does any of this matter? When we're looking at four-cylinder engines, a four-cylinder engine is not that big in comparison to an eight-cylinder, and we'll see how that plays a role when we get into the 1970s. So here we see a six-cylinder engine. You have the four, you have the six, you have an eight. For the most part, it's really going to be about fuel consumption. What will the outcomes be if Chevy offers a six-cylinder? What if Chevy offers more colors? So as I said before, the Model T Ford is coming in one color. The Model T Ford, you really don't have that much variation, and it's not until the 1930s, mid-30s, going into the late 30s, where Chevy starts to compete with Ford by providing more color variations and different styles of vehicles. So that's the significance, and we're going to start to see competition among car manufacturers. So here we see the 1930 versus the 1921 Ford. So we could see that some of the colors, the color variation. Here we see the front bumper, which is made out of chrome. Um, we see the different color tones. Um, Prohibition. So for the most part, prohibition and that's banning of alcohol, which eventually creates a situation where NASCAR is going to develop. So this is really about car tuning. So we've already said that you have a four-cylinder engine. So if you take that four-cylinder engine and you're able to manipulate the engine, pretty much what these individuals are doing here, I don't quite know what they're doing, but what could you do is if you can get more air into the engine block, if you can create a faster spark, if you can get more fuel, that is going to create a situation where the vehicle is going to travel, be able to move faster. So let's say out of the factory, when the car is built, it can travel at 40 miles per hour. And by you manipulating, you are able to take that 40 miles per hour and now make the car go 50 miles per hour. So why is that significant during Prohibition? Well, if you want to outrun the police, you would have to figure out a way to make the engine faster, because remember, police don't make cars, car manufacturers make police cars. And so you would have to be in a situation where you can outrun the cops as you're trying to transport illegal alcohol across state lines. So people that are engaging in bootlegging, they want to figure out a way to make the vehicles faster. So you start to see engines being tampered with and competing to figure out which one is going to be able to travel with illegal contraband and outrun the police. So there's a link between the manipulation of the car engine to racing, which indirectly leads to NASCAR. So feel free to look that up. As an auto manufacturer, how would you cater to car enthusiasts? So what you need to take note of here is that car enthusiasts are people that are going to eventually create a car culture. And they're probably not going to be too interested in a four-cylinder vehicle that is coming in one color. They probably want more variation in their vehicles. So if you're a car manufacturer, what would you do to attract some of these car enthusiasts to buy your vehicle? So here comes some of the items, color, speed, new gadgets. You can focus on the family, and you can it should be Sell American Freedom, typo on that one. So you see some of the evolution of the vehicles. So here we have vehicles from the 1940s, very different from the 1930s vehicle. So here in this 1940s one, you start noticing a couple of things. You start seeing these fenders, which are a little more um, you know, circular. You see the big grill right here, and the grill is going to allow air to get into the engine. You see shiny chrome. You see chrome going in this direction. You see chrome here. You see chrome here. So they're really trying to make the car a little more appealing to attract, different types of people that, probably have a different eye for what makes a car nice. So here you see a similar looking vehicle from the 1940s. This one is convertible. Notice the white wall tires. And again, you have that grille that's there. You have that big bumper. You have a lot of that chrome jewelry that is all over this particular vehicle. And that's just designed to try to attract different buyers. So it seems to be a competition among car manufacturers. And here you could see some of the difference. Maybe this vehicle right here caters more to the family oriented male. If you put a bigger motor, that's going to cater to somebody who is a car enthusiast concerned with speed. Then we transition to the 1950s, and in the 1950s, you see cars starting to change with regard to look as well as speed. Here you see the space race as a result of Sputnik and the desire to make it to the moon and outer space, and you see that kind of playing out in the cars in the 50s. So here you see a car that has a fin-looking rear. Here you see this, which they're trying to mimic what a spaceship might look like, and you kind of see that playing out in the actual look of the vehicle. Here we see a 1953 Crestline, so similar to the cars from the 40s. When we're looking at this one here, you see that long grill that's behind this pretty big bumper. All of this stuff being made with metal. Nowadays you'll probably see a vehicle that has a lot more plastic parts, and this is just straight metal. Sitting on that chassis, probably a lot heavier, which is going to require a bigger motor. Here we see the 57 Bel Air, a sought after vehicle for car enthusiasts. As a car manufacturer, what do you do? Think about these options here. If you have to pick one, what are you going to do? If you cater to the car enthusiast, that probably might mean that the car is going to be very fast. So maybe you're able to get the vehicle up to like 80 miles per hour. But if you're trying to cater to the 1950s wife who's concerned about the family, I don't necessarily know that mom wants to speed at 80 miles per hour. So you have to figure out a way to kind of attract and appeal to all of these particular customers. Point here is that eventually you start to see a car culture develop. If you were to look up the song Little Deuce Coupe by the Beach Boys, they're making a reference to the 1932 Chevy, the Little Deuce Coupe, which was a vehicle that was modified, as you could see here. The the fenders and the hood is removed. You see that the car could be lowered. They have some flames. They've changed the paint, and they probably have modified this engine where it's really fast in comparison to how this car comes out of the factory. So when listening to the song or looking at the lyrics, which I would probably play here, but I just don't want to get flagged. So in the song here, the guy's talking about his Little Deuce Coupe, and he's saying here, you don't know what I got. He's saying probably here that he has modified his engine so much, you don't know what he's got. And if you think you are going to race him, you better keep in mind he is probably better at modifying the car than you are. And that's what he's saying. You don't know what I got, don't challenge me. So here he's saying, he's not bragging, don't put him down. He's got the fastest set of wheels in town. When something comes up to me, he don't even try. Because if I had a set of wings, man, I know she could fly. He's talking about the vehicle there. Here he goes back to the chorus about his Little Deuce Coupe. Here he's talking about the vehicle. He's saying that he has a competition clutch. He's got a 4-speed shifter. And he's pretty much talking about how he is able to get the vehicle to a certain speed at a faster pace, which is going to allow him to beat you in a race. So the goal here is you want to be able to turn this vehicle into this vehicle, and you see some big differences. And again, this is all about the car enthusiast, the individual who's concerned with making the car look different, trying to appeal to his individual taste, trying to make the car faster. And so the car manufacturers have to figure out a way to kind of attract that potential buyer. Here you see another modified vehicle. In the 1950s, you see the golden age of cars. This would be a big debate among car enthusiasts. When was the golden age of cars? You're going to probably get a different answer. But for the most part, this is where you start to see Americans cruising, just driving around, that sense of freedom, modifying their big V8 engines, which again means that they have a 8-cylinder engine. And then the cars are not as complex, so you probably could fix this vehicle at home. Really not much to this vehicle. It's not relying on any sort of computer technology. And that's going to create a situation where people are probably less likely to sell their vehicles. Maybe they're going to be able to fix them at home, or modify them at home. So again, you're talking about this regular car here and the modification to make the car look like this. So we're looking at the same vehicle here. Here you just did a search for 1950 cruising, and you see images of, just cars driving down the strip. This individual showing off his ride, hanging out, showing off your vehicle. We know that because this individual has made it a point to remove his hood. So he's probably modified his engine. We don't know if he's got a 6-cylinder, 4-cylinder, an 8-cylinder, but he's definitely trying to show it off. Seems like this guy's looking. This guy has removed his hood as well. So hanging out at the local, diner shop, in this case A&W, is developing a car culture. You could go here, hang out, show off your car, and definitely part of the 50s going into the 60s. Here I've just used a chart from Strauss and Howe's book, Generations, and we're really just looking at the point here that people primarily concerned with this car culture at the golden age, at its peak, are probably going to be the baby boomers, because the baby boomers would be in a perfect time with the late 50s going into the 60s, where car manufacturers are really trying to cater to the baby boomers and what they're looking for in a vehicle. You also see suburban life, the drive-in movie theater. Yes, that's a thing. You can take your car to the drive-in, hang out at the suburbs. You might want to take a look at the theme song for the show Happy Days, hang out at school dances, and all of these images, play out in American culture and entertainment. Shows, movies like Grease, shows like The Wonder Years, Happy Days, they all seem to try to look at the 1950s as a golden age where, this could be a big part of a teenager's life, and that's where that culture is really going to start to develop for suburban Americans. 1950s, keep in mind, there are other issues that are going on. What if you're a homosexual? What if you're African American? What about that sexual revolution? There are definitely things that are going on. Rock and roll is considered the devil's music, so there's probably a good chance maybe as you're hanging out at the local A&W, you might be listening to any one of these songs. If you're a man who really wants to oppress your woman, your wife, you probably don't want her listening to certain songs like Leslie Gore. You probably want her listening to Peggy March. So feel free to take a look at what that is. 1960s, you see these car manufacturers. This is also about the time when the federal government is going to, work on that federal highway system, which is going to connect America. Why are you trying to connect America? Because more Americans have cars. 1960s, another debate question, the golden age of a muscle car. So when you see the phrase muscle car, that is a reference to vehicles that were designed to cater to people looking for speed. And here you see the Ford Mustang, which was a vehicle that definitely was catering to car enthusiasts that were looking to go faster. Not to be outdone, you see the Plymouth Roadrunner. So again, like these vehicles, these car manufacturers are competing. They're trying to put bigger motors, they're trying to reduce the weight of the vehicle, all in an effort to make the car faster. In some cases, you might be in a situation where you have this one vehicle right here, and maybe this is going to be marketed to the family. And then you take this same vehicle, and as the car manufacturer, you just modify it a little, and then you sell this to car enthusiasts who want to buy this car, but they don't want to be labeled the family individual. They want to be associated with their youth. So you have the same vehicle. And why is that significant? Well, eventually you're going to see American car manufacturers going into the 80s where they're trying to pretty much sell off the same car with slight modifications. Here we see the Dodge Super Bee. 1963 Chevy Impala, which could also be marketed to the family as well as to car enthusiasts with their super sport version, the SS. And that's pretty much where we're at for the first section on cars and American culture.